Murder in high security prison when a paedophile was disemboweled in HMP FRANKLAND. So that's what I'm talking about in this video. I'll just tell you a little bit about the victim, the paedophile who was killed, disemboweled, and the two lads that done it, who committed the murder, before I tell you the story. So the paedophile who got disemboweled was Mitchell Harrison. He was 23-year-old from Cumbria, and he was serving a 4.5-year IPP for raping a 13-year-old girl. So he already had previous crimes against children, and on this occasion he got a 13-year-old girl to come back to his flat, pretended he was getting her cigarettes and a drink, took her in the flat and made her strip naked, and then raped her, and then raped her again. He got done with 2 counts of rape, but luckily the girl managed to escape, and she ran out into the street, and a passing neighbour found the girl in the street naked with her clothes in her hand, and that's how he got caught. And he got a 4.5-year IPP, and he was murdered by Michael Parr and Nathan Mann. Michael Parr was serving a life sentence for the attempted murder of another patient when he was on a psychiatric ward, and Nathan Mann was serving a 24-year minimum term life sentence for the murder of 2 elderly women. And what he done, he broke into a nursing home in the middle of the night, crept in and murdered 2 women in the bed, a 72-year-old woman and a 56-year-old woman. He obviously got caught and got a 24-year tariff. So these 3 were in Frankland together on the nod swings, and this was just after I'd left Frankland. I remember my friends telling us when they were writing us letters telling us about it. And Michael Parr and Nathan Mann got friends in Frankland, and they both started sharing fantasies with each other, and they both realised that they were both similar to each other, and they both tell each other that they wanted to kill another inmate and disembowel him and eat the liver, because they both wanted to be known as cannibals, and this is the fantasy that they had. But Michael Parr fantasized more about killing because he hadn't actually previously killed. He just attempted to murder somebody. So this day, when they decided to do the murder, they got Mitchell Harrison into the pad and shut the door behind him, and Michael Parr got him in a headlock, dragged him into the pad and tried to strangle him. He tried to kill him by strangulation, but that didn't work. But in the meanwhile, Nathan Mann, the lad, had the paedophile by his legs, so he's on the floor, wrapped him in his legs, while the other one's behind him in a chokehold, squeezing the life out of him, trying to kill him. But that didn't work, so he picked the biro pen up and stabbed him in the eye, stabbed his eye out, and then picked the razor blade up and slit his throat while he still had a hold of him. So he slit his throat and let him bleed out. So he's lying on the floor, Nathan Mann's on his legs, and he bled out on the floor. Then they started hacking his stomach up. They've cut open his stomach and started pulling his insides out. And obviously they disemboweled him, pulled all of his insides out, and they were going to eat his liver like they both fantasized about. But they were both actually amazed at how far they'd went, and they were shocked at the level of violence that they inflicted on him, and they both bottled it in the end, and they didn't actually eat his liver. And they both just casually walked out onto the landing, covered in blood, said to the screws, "We've just murdered someone." So the screws walked in the pad, couldn't believe the scene that they'd witnessed, knowing that they'd just been sitting fucking yards up the landing at a desk whilst all of this was going on in the pad. But they admitted to what they'd done because they wanted to be known for this notorious crime. And they went to court for it and everything. They pleaded guilty, they admitted to it. And Michael Parr, because he was the leading one who'd done all the violence, cut his throat and done most of it. And because he was saying he was the one that wanted to kill him, he ended up with a 32-year tariff on top of his original sentence. So he's doing 2 life sentences. And Nathan Mann, who was already doing a 24 rec, got an extra 16 on top of his original. So he's got to do a minimum of 40 years before he'll be considered for release. But when you read up on it, it's on Google, the judge said that they'll probably never be released. And obviously they probably won't for doing that sort of violence inside of prison and having them type of thoughts and fantasies. But the way they looked at it, they killed this paedophile for the reason that they didn't look at themselves as being as bad as him, because they hadn't inflicted anything on children, and they don't see themselves as bad as him. They looked at him as being vermin for raping a 13-year-old child, and that was the reason why they done it. But that's all for that one, people. If you do like the content, remember to like and subscribe, because I have loads of more stories coming up. But enjoy the rest of your weekend, people. Take care.